Roth IRA is an individual retirement account where the money you put into the account is taxed on the year up front, but after that you can invest the money however you want, and you're not going to be charged taxes on the growth of the investment or on the back end when you withdraw at retirement. And because this account is so important for you, the first mistake you need to avoid with it is not using it. Now with this account, in order to withdraw tax-free and penalty-free at your retirement, you must be at least the age of 59 and a half, and that is assuming that it's been at least 5 years from your first contribution. This may seem really far away from you, but to be honest, the further away it is, the better. I say this because of what's called the power of compound interest, which means as you invest over time, you'll be able to generate more and more money as the account grows. A famous analogy of this is a snowball rolling down a hill getting bigger and bigger, but now it's with your money. So to emphasize the value of this, let's just say that you invested into the S&P 500, which is basically a way to invest into 500 of the largest companies traded on the US stock exchanges, where over the past 30 years, it would have grown your investments at an average rate of 9.9%, not including inflation. But understand that currently, if you were under 50, the most you can contribute into this account is $7,000 per year, and if you're over 50, you can contribute an extra $1,000. So knowing that, let's say you're 30 and you invest into a Roth IRA using a simple broad US index fund like the S&P 500 until you're 60, over that time, you would have invested $217,000, but your portfolio would actually be worth over $1.2 million due to the growth of the investments. You see, that $1.2 million portfolio that you would have built up by retirement, it's completely tax-free. So by utilizing a Roth IRA over a traditional brokerage account that you have to pay taxes on, that's going to allow you to save at least tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes. And so the differences between the two is that with a traditional brokerage account, yes, you are taxed up front, but you'll also have to pay taxes on dividend income and capital gains going forward, where the Roth IRA is taxed up front, but never again after that. So my motto with this is to start using this account as soon as possible, prioritize it, and contribute the maximum you can into the account before you go ahead and use traditional brokerage accounts. Moving on from there, when it comes to actually investing in the account, you need to avoid excessive fees. So with the Roth IRA, you get to decide how you want the account managed, and for the most part, the options consist of either you doing it yourself, you get a robo-advisor, or a trusted financial advisor to do it for you. Let's say you decide to manage it yourself, you need to understand the investments that you're picking. I'll cover more on that shortly, but when it comes to long-term investing in the stock market, index funds are the way to go. And that's because they track certain markets like the entire US stock market all in one purchase, and investments like that have historically done very well over time. They're super easy to purchase, where on the other hand, you could actually purchase an actively managed fund where there is someone, a fund manager, who manages the investments inside of the fund, but it costs more and many times does not perform as well as a simple index fund. I mention this because the expense ratio, which is the cost it takes to own the fund per year for an actively managed fund, is on average between 0.5% to 0.75%, which seems super small, but when you consider all this money you are investing over time and the amount of time you're doing it for, it does add up significantly. For example, let's just say that you had all actively managed funds, and even being on the lower end of 0.5% being the expense ratio, that means that with the example earlier, instead of building your portfolio to 1.25 million, it would now reach only 1.13 million. Still sounds like a lot of money, which it is, but when you think of how much less that is, it's $120,000. And that also assumes that the actively managed funds you're getting can actually perform just as well as the stock market benchmark like the S&P 500. Studies literally show that 80% of active fund managers actually underperform the S&P 500. So because of that, that is $120,000 that you're missing out on. And if you want to miss out on even more, which I have nothing against advisors, but if you go with a robo-advisor, the average is 0.25% per year in fees, and then a financial advisor may be around 1%, which on a $2 million portfolio over 10 years, that could cost you more than $375,000. Now there are great intentions for both, and many prefer to do that over creating their own portfolio, but if you want to do it on your own and you just get simple index funds, which isn't that hard to do, and I've made tons of videos on this content if you are interested to check it out. You can also subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate that, but it's the fact of you could probably save around 1.5% per year in fees. And if we factor that into the example from earlier that generated a $1.25 million portfolio, With those fees factored in, it would now only generate you $932,000, which that's almost a $300,000 difference due to the fees over time. So just like that, by investing over $500 a month, if you use a Roth IRA without excessive fees or a traditional brokerage account with excessive fees, the difference could be almost $500,000 of value. And that's just from investing $500 a month. Imagine if it was more. Now, obviously, all this depends on the actual investments you choose, so that is the next mistake I want to go over, that is getting speculative investments. As I mentioned, with the Roth IRA, you can invest the money however you want, and picking the right investments is extremely important. It's also a huge reason why I constantly research and create the content I do, because I believe investing in the stock market is one of the easiest things you can do to grow your money instead of having it underneath your bed where it's not earning anything. If you were to try to put all your money instead of into any sort of investments but into a savings account that doesn't earn you anything, being able to retire off that is nearly impossible. But I won't say it's not. Now with the Roth IRA, even though the trades that you make in this account aren't going to be taxed at all, it doesn't mean you have the green light to go and trade penny stocks and hope that you can explode your Roth IRA. You see, you can only put so much in this account, and it is meant for your long-term retirement to rely on one day. So because of that, this account is something not meant for day trading or hoping that a certain stock is going to blow up in a few months. It's for that long-term vision. Because of that, the only investments that I truly recommend to be purchased in this account are index funds. And to be even more specific, I believe majority of the account should have exposure to the broad US market, as that's what's historically done the best. It's cheap, it's super easy to do, and the US economy is always developing and growing over time. So I use Fidelity for my Roth IRA, and the easiest thing you could do is just buy a total US stock market index fund, where on Fidelity, the ticker is FSKAX. But what I actually prefer to do is narrow it down and purchase a large cap index fund, FXAIX, then a mid cap, which is FSMDX, and small cap, that is FSSNX. I like having them separate because I can see how each of them perform, and I can control how much I specifically allocate toward each on my own. Now, I'm obviously not a financial advisor, I'm just here to inform you, but with this account, just remember to avoid the speculative investments, go for growth index funds because you want this thing to grow over the long term, and avoid the mistake number 4, that is to withdraw early. Now with the Roth IRA, you can actually withdraw the contribution you put into the account without paying taxes or penalties, but I wouldn't even consider doing this as an option. You see, this account is for your retirement specifically, so whatever you contribute into this account needs to be viewed as you're not going to touch it for any time in the near future. And if you think about what happens if you have an emergency, that's why you need to have an emergency fund in place before you do other things. I will mention that if you have your savings in a traditional bank account like Chase or Wells Fargo, you're not going to be earning really any interest at all, so I would highly recommend looking into a high yield savings account because you'll be able to earn much more interest with the cash that you have saved. And I will say the one I use and recommend is SoFi, where you can currently get a $325 cash bonus when you sign up for their high yield savings account using the link I have in the description below. But the only thing is that it needs to be a direct deposit with your employer. But in regards to withdrawing from the Roth IRA early, let's just say that you took out $7,000 at the age of 30, you're potentially missing out on future gains because that $7,000 over 30 years could give you $112,000 in future growth. And if you decide to withdraw any earnings from your account before you are eligible to do so at retirement, you'll have to pay a 10% penalty fee on top of taxes. With that said, the number 5 mistake, the last one, is breaking the contribution rules. So there are 5 main things related to this that you need to know about, with the first one being the income limits. For the Roth IRA, there's a rule in place that if you have over a certain income, you can't contribute into the Roth account. Now, if you're a high income earner and this prevents you from being able to contribute, you can actually do what's called a backdoor Roth IRA, which is pretty much contributing to a traditional IRA and then converting that into your Roth. If that interests you, I highly recommend looking into that further, and I'll actually be making a video on that in the future on my channel, so don't forget to subscribe. Aside from that, I mentioned it briefly, but you have to understand the contribution limits to avoid paying additional fees. So currently, as of 2024, the contribution limit if you're under 50 is $7,000, and if you're above 50, that's $8,000. The thing about these numbers is that they do increase over time due to inflation and other economic factors. Even if we look at the year of 2023, the limit was $6,500 for those under 50, and then $7,500 for those above, which you can even see in the years prior to that the limit was $6,000 and $7,000 per year. Now, if you're killing it or you don't even realize you made this next mistake, you need to fix it, and that is contributing too much. Not only is it bad practice to contribute an amount amount that you may actually need. But on the other end, if you contribute more than the contribution limit, you're going to be charged fees. For example, let's say you have a Vanguard Roth IRA and Fidelity Roth IRA. You can only contribute $7,000 total among any Roth or traditional accounts that you have. So if you contributed $7,000 to the Vanguard and then $7,000 into the Fidelity Roth IRA, that would be a total of $14,000 contributed. And if you're under 50, that means you would be contributing $7,000 over the maximum that you're allowed, and that could cause you to pay a 6% penalty fee every year until the issue is resolved. As you can see from this example, if you are 60 with the current contribution limit of $8,000 per year and you contribute an excess $1,000, which makes a total of $9,000 for the year, you could actually apply that $1,000 extra to the following year's contribution, but you'll still have to pay the 6% fee, which would be $60. On the other hand, if you remove the excess contributions and any earnings that came from the investments before filing your tax return, you can avoid any fees. So to avoid any mistakes, just understand how much you're actually putting into your accounts, because if you have more than one, it can become pretty confusing. Where if you have it on only one account, most platforms actually show how much you've contributed so far, and they give you a progress bar for what you've done. So in my opinion, keeping everything on one platform is just the simplest way to go about things. And don't forget that the contribution limit is the total among both traditional and Roth IRAs combined. So if you had $5,000 in a Roth IRA on Fidelity and $2,000 in a traditional IRA on Vanguard, that would be fine, but just make sure it doesn't go over $7,000. Personally, I would just aim to have it all on one platform. And speaking of contributing to your account, the next mistake to avoid is contributing without earned income. The thing about contributing to your Roth IRA is that it has to be earned income, which includes many things like wages, salary, commissions, tips, self-employment income, and pretty much any way of earning true income that's taxable. But there are some that don't count, such as rental property income and dividends. This is important to understand because if you contribute without it truly being earned income, then you may also have a 6% penalty fee every year as well, similar to if you contributed too much. But there actually is one way that you could get away with contributing without an earned income, which is the next mistake I'm going to talk about. That is contributing for your spouse. Now, the Roth IRA is such a powerful retirement account that if you are one that has a spouse that is not able to contribute into this account, you could actually do it for them, assuming you file taxes jointly. Understand that this is not a joint Roth IRA account because an IRA stands for individual retirement account, which means it has to be under your own individual account. But if your spouse can't contribute and you file taxes jointly, then you can contribute your after-tax money into their individual Roth IRA, assuming all other rules are followed. By doing this, you could double the amount you could invest into the Roth IRA, and from the power of investing over time, the likeliness of having a successful retirement because of this is much higher. Which, speaking of, if you want to see my video on the ultimate strategy to using a Roth IRA, I highly recommend you check it out, and I'll have it linked in the description below. And while I mention it, I also broke down the differences between Roth and traditional IRA and other videos covering everything you would want to know about the Roth if you are interested. Which, if you also want to see how I allocate my investments or need assistance building your own portfolio, check out the links I have in the description below. And as always, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notifications button for future content like this.